The phone number, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Oh, my goodness gracious, last night, y'all. I don't even want to begin with the candidates because that's not actually the story today, and this helps Bernie Sanders. CBS News had its Democratic debate last night, and it was terrible. It was a really, really bad debate. And it was a bad debate because the moderators were terrible. It was so it was a Congressional Black Caucus CBS co-debate. They had a number of people from CNN there. Man, Gayle King, she hates Mike Bloomberg's guts. Good gracious. It was impressive, the passive aggressiveness. But that was part of the problem here is the way these debates work, just so you understand. Typically what happens is the media and the various parties and groups are reaching out to each other, trying to come to an agreement on a debate. And so they'll partner. You'll have a political group, and the political group is largely responsible for bringing in the crowd and covering some of the costs. And then you have the media group, and the media group does the staging and production and handles the moderation and things like that. And behind the scenes, what you do is you have multiple meetings in the run-ups to the debate. The moderators, if it's a group moderated debate, they're getting together. They're deciding who's going to ask what questions are relevant or not. And, you know, to CBS's credit, they were flexible last night in asking about the coronavirus towards the end of the debate, but they had a lot of other stuff they wanted to get to. The problem is that they also offer some dumb questions, and they want to try to get some lighthearted moments. But it was also very clear from the debate last night that one of the things CBS wanted to do was generate news. So questions were asked in order to generate news. They wanted to generate sound bites. They weren't just praying, and this is important, and you need to understand the distinction. They weren't just trying to ask candidates their positions on issues and gin up controversy against Bernie Sanders and allow the other candidates to attack him. They had specific issues they wanted to ask in order to try to generate headlines, it seemed. And that's a behind-the-scenes thing. There are producers and directors and executives and editors at CBS News who owe the country, the candidates, and the audience an apology. They did a terrible job. That actually helps Bernie Sanders at a time where, in fact, Pete Buttigieg and others were able to get some distinct attacks on Bernie Sanders. The major headlines this morning are about how bad the debate was. Democrats are upset about the debate. They are upset about the way it went forward. The Bernie Sanders campaign is pointing out the crowd was deeply hostile to Bernie Sanders. And in fact, tickets were between $1,000 and $3,500 to get into the debate. So people bought their way into the CBS debate. Each seat had a price tag. So the people coming were people who had money and means. So naturally, people hostile to Bernie, which what does that say about Bernie Sanders? That people with money and means are bad to him or out to get him. You know, most people in this country, most voters in this country have money and means. There's actually a story out this morning that if Bernie Sanders wants to actually succeed, he's going to have to expand his pool of voters beyond young people who don't actually vote, and he's not doing it. And he's not going to have a hugely great debate performance in South Carolina, or he's not going to have a hugely great election performance in South Carolina. But the moderators of the debate actually did a bad job. And they asked bad questions. They let the candidates run roughshod over them. They didn't kill microphones. They didn't have buzzers. They didn't do anything. They tried to be polite. And about halfway through the debate, they would get really passive aggressive. They would interrupt and say, I realize a minute, 15 seconds isn't long enough to make your point, but it's what we all agreed to and we need to move on. And meanwhile, the candidate is still talking over them. And then they say, no, Senator, we need to move on. Senator, we want to go to Mr. Bloomberg now. Senator, we want to go to Mr. It went on like this the entire night. It was so bad. And then at the end of it, Nora O'Donnell actually goes to commercial break and says, we'll be right back. And when she comes back, she says, that's the end of the debate. And they went to more commercials. It was poorly executed. I mean, she's trying to bail on her own debate with a commercial break. The moderators are the story from last night. It was really a bad debate. It was terribly orchestrated. Stylistically, it was okay. I personally find the questions of what is your biggest weakness, that is standard 101 debate question. You never actually answer what your biggest weakness is. What is your personal motto? Elizabeth Warren, interestingly enough, last night was all upset that Mike Bloomberg told a woman to kill it, referring to her baby in the womb as opposed to she had the audacity to say baby instead of fetus for a Democrat. That's heresy. And then at the end, she got to quote the Bible. She wanted scripture. Matthew 25 is her personal motto. Man, she's opportunistic. She's like Teresa Tomlinson on the national stage. Goodness gracious. That woman will say or do anything to you. But it's very interesting. Elizabeth Warren did not go after Bernie Sanders very hard. She tried to make the case that he would not be the best because he's doesn't have a chance of beating Trump. What's so curious here is basically she took the position that that Bernie Sanders' positions are all great. It's Bernie Sanders is the flawed candidate. And so she's trying to ask Democratic voters to go with her, someone less popular than Bernie Sanders within the Democratic Party. That's a very hard thing for Elizabeth Warren to do, and yet she tried to pull it off. Not well. But she certainly went after the candidates. Now, I actually have less audio from this debate than any debate we've covered in the last number of years. And the reason is pretty simple. They talked over each other so much, it was very hard to get a good soundbite of anybody saying anything. And again, all of this helps Bernie Sanders. And I want to begin with the reaction to the debate. Before that, there's a very telling comment from David Axelrod about Bernie Sanders. As the winds begin to shift in Sanders' favor, Axelrod realizes it. Bloomberg did not have a good debate performance. Okay, so people are saying Bloomberg had a good debate performance last night. Bloomberg had a good debate performance to the extent that someone who is in a coma is now awake in the hospital. That's how Bloomberg's performance improved. It was not good. His jokes they were just dumb. He needs better joke writers. Seriously, listen to this joke.
Yes, she's. I'm sorry, but unfortunately, she's misinformed on red lighting. You can go back and look at the record. I fought against it before 08, the crisis, during 08, and after that. Redlining is not the problem with the mortgage market, but it was a problem for the communities where it was done, and we stopped that. Let me also say, because since I have the floor for a second, that I really am surprised that all of these, my fellow contestants up here, I guess would be the right word for it, given nobody pays attention to the clock. I'm surprised they show up because I would have thought after I did such a good job in beating them last week that they'd be a little bit afraid to do that. Let me just say, when you're talking about affordable housing, we created 175,000 units of affordable housing in
Bloomberg told a funny. Oh, good gracious. You want to know how I know that the winds are blowing decisively in Bernie Sanders' favor? Listen to this from David Axelrod.
The Republicans and Donald Trump are going to make this same case against any Democratic candidate. But it's easier to make when that Democratic candidate embraces the title of socialist and doesn't refute it. And the truth of the matter is, Bernie Sanders is not a socialist. I mean, if you look it up in the dictionary, he's not calling for, society to own the means of production and all of that stuff. And why he is so reluctant to make that point, and he is like a fortress, Andrew, but not on that question tonight.
No,
on that question tonight, he looked unmoored. And while it shouldn't necessarily be the most important question, they will make it the most important question.
It hasn't dawned. And listen, by the way, I know and like David Axelrod. He's a very nice guy. I've been to his house, and he's a nice guy. He is a very committed partisan Democrat. He is worried about the leftward drift of the Democratic Party, and for him to essentially take the position that Sanders really isn't as far to the left as people are trying to paint him. That's spin and damage control. No, Sanders really is that far to the left, and that's why Sanders can't do the things that the Democrats want him to do. That's why Sanders can't bring himself to denounce a guy like Fidel Castro. He's got to, on one side of his mouth, condemn him, but on the other side, praise him. That's the problem. Bernie Sanders is who he has always been. A man who honeymooned in the Soviet Union, a man who was praised by Soviet commissars, a man who has taken the side of every communist dictator against the United States. And you know what? They had a hard time going after him on stage last night with that. They had a hard time on stage last night leveling any attacks on him. Pete Buttigieg probably landed more blows on Bernie Sanders than the rest of them, and Buttigieg is having a hard time. Here's Buttigieg on the debate stage last night.
It was 30, then it was 17. It's an incredible shrinking price tag. At some point has said it is unknowable to even see what the price tag would be. Now there are new numbers going. I'll tell you exactly what it adds up to. It adds up to 4 more years of Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, and the inability to get the Senate into Democratic hands. The time has come for us to stop acting like the presidency is the only office that matters. Not only is this a way to get Donald Trump reelected, we got a House to worry about. We got a Senate to worry about. And this is really important. Look, if you want to keep the House in Democratic hands, you might want to check with the people who actually turned the House blue. 40 Democrats who are not running on your platform. They are running away from your platform as fast as they possibly can. I want to send those Democrats back to the United States House. Let's listen to them when they say that they don't want to be out there defending Senator Sanders.
You get a sense of the moderators there, too. Vice President Biden, Vice President Biden, Vice President Biden. I mean, terrible, terrible moderation. Terrible moderation. But Buttigieg landed some blows. I'll tell you, one other blow that was landed was actually by Mike Bloomberg against Sanders.
Mayor Bloomberg.
Senator.
By the way,
Mayor
pause.
Bloomberg,
Hear the crowd cheering every time they go to Bloomberg. This has allowed the Sanders campaign today. The crowd actually helped Bernie Sanders because Sanders is pointing out that the crowd was so pro Mike Bloomberg, a man who is not even on the ballot in South Carolina. Clearly, Bloomberg in some capacity had to have been able to stack the crowd. And the crowd tickets were $1,500 to $3,500. So clearly someone with money had to help people get in. And they're starting to ask questions this morning. Did Bloomberg pay people to be there?
On to that, do you think Senator Sanders' economy would be better for America than President Trump?
I think that Donald Trump thinks it would be better if he's president. I do not think so. Vladimir Putin thinks that Donald Trump should be president of the United States, and that's why Russia is helping you get elected so you'll lose to him.
Hear the crowd? Hear the crowd?
Let me tell Mr. Putin, okay, I'm not a good friend of President Xi of China. I think President Xi is an authoritarian leader. And let me tell Mr. Putin, who interfered in the 2016 election, try to bring Americans against Americans. Hey, Mr. Putin, if I'm president of the United States, trust me, you're not going to interfere in any more American elections.
Yeah. Look, the crowd loved Bloomberg's point, but again, that allows Bernie Sanders to say the crowd was bought and paid for by him. Well, I got to say, the feedback from people watching the debate last night. And again, I want to walk through audio for I've got less audio from this debate than from pretty much any other debate we've done. Part of it was I wanted to save my call screener producer's liver at the same time, and his mind, I guess. At the same time, there just wasn't a lot there because it was just such a poorly controlled and orchestrated debate. There weren't a ton of good things there because everyone was talking over everyone. Everyone was yelling. It was very, very hard. There was one controversy last night over whether or not Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota used the F word on stage. And it probably was her saying Margaret, but it sounded otherwise as she was exasperated by the moderators interrupting. There are a number of people from Minnesota saying people from Minnesota don't use that word. It must have been Margaret. I don't know. It's like, remember that internet meme of whether the dress was blue or the dress was white? It's kind of that with the audio. Is it the F word or is it her saying someone's name? Oh, the debate was actually, I mean, it really was bad. And I feel sorry. I mean, Norah O'Donnell, Major Garrett, Margaret Brennan, these are good journalists. But that debate was moderated so terribly, and it was produced so badly by CBS. Now, when we come back, let's break down the individual candidates. I'm sure you wanted to know if Elizabeth Warren went after Bloomberg again. Oh, yes. Yes, she did.
News and in-depth analysis from Erick. Now.
I haven't figured out what recipe I'm sending out, but I guess I ought to. Y'all, we will get into the candidates, I promise. But one housekeeping note. You may see people with a gray smudge on their forehead today. It's not actually a smudge. It's Ash Wednesday. Please be respectful of our Christian brethren who celebrate Ash Wednesday. So I grew up Southern Baptist, and I'm now in the PCA. We're the fun Presbyterians, as in fundamentalists. we're real fun. We're the non-heretical denomination of Presbyterians. I'll put it to you that way. are a few others. You know, I mean, for all the Baptists who decide we're going to be Southern Baptist, but we're going to be mad at the First Baptist Church, so we're going to go start the Second Baptist Church, and then half that congregation gets hacked off at the other, so they go start the Third Baptist Church. We Presbyterians, we just go start up our own denominations. We got the ARP, the OPC, the EPC, the PCA, the PCUSA. Meanwhile, the Southern Baptists got the Southern Baptists. And they all get together for a family reunion once a year and fight. We don't do that in the PCA so much. We all get along now because But we do celebrate Lent. Presbyterians do celebrate Lent and Ash Wednesday, and our ritual is not actually to go to church. Like, I won't go to church today and get a cross from ash from last year's Palm Sunday branches on my forehead. And instead, the way that we in the PCA and Presbyterians worldwide celebrate Lent and Ash Wednesday is we offer to carry the sinful burdens of our Southern Baptist brethren, particularly if they've got a good liquor cabinet. We will take that for the next 40 days just to spare them the temptation in this Lenten season. We don't do the whole cross thing. We'll take our Baptist brethren's bourbon for them just to keep them safe, keep them out of purgatory and sin in hell. Yeah, I honest to goodness, there was a while there when I made the mistake, and I say this every year on Ash Wednesday now, largely because years ago I made the mistake of I did not grow up with a bunch of Catholic friends, and had a friend of mine who had the cross drawn on his forehead on Ash Wednesday. I said, "Dude, you got something on your forehead?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's supposed to be a cross." It's like, oh, I had no idea. And then I was on. This was before I was on TV. And I got on CNN, and I remember the first Ash Wednesday I was on CNN, a lady in the studio commented on someone having a smudge on their forehead, and I was like, don't do what I did. That's not actually it looks like a smudge, but it's actually not a smudge. So don't do that today. The other thing I got to say is I got to get my driver's license renewed. You know, I forgot to get my carry permit renewed. Now, it's been so long. It's been a year now. I didn't even realize it was expired. Oops. I wasn't carrying, though, I promise. So now I got to go through the whole process again. And now I'm thinking my driver's license expires in June. I got to go through the process of getting it renewed. And you used to be able to get online and do that. And now you can't because of the freaking Real ID stuff. Y'all, this is ridiculous. In October, starting in October of this year, you will not be able to go through an airport in the United States of America unless you have a Real ID compliant photo ID, passport or driver's license, and typically driver's license. So if you show up and you've got your state driver's license and it is not Real ID compliant, you're in trouble. The Real ID is a uniform federal government protocol they came up with after 9/11. A lot of people fought it for having a standardized ID across the states. They thought that was an invasion of privacy, but they got overruled by the feds. And now if you want to get your driver's license renewed, you got to go in, you got to have your passport with you or a birth certificate. You've got to have your social security card or something with your social security number on it, a W-2 or a paycheck stub. Then you've got to have a utility bill or something. You got to have proof of address, and you got to have proof of ID. You got to have proof of Georgia residency. You got to have all these things. It is a bureaucratic hassle just to get your freaking driver's license renewed. And Georgia's not alone in this. It's other states. And don't blame Brian Kemp. This predated him. This is not a Brian Kemp thing. I mentioned this morning, and people were blowing me up. Well, you voted for the governor. Well, I voted for the last two governors, too. And it was actually not even them. It was done well before that, putting all this stuff in place. But it's so annoying. I just need a driver's license. All right, when we come back.
Seconds.
Candidates by candidates. How all the candidates on the debate stage in Charleston did last night. All right. How about we walk through the candidates so we can move on from the debate? By the way, in the third hour, Chris Burns from Dynamic Money is going to join me to talk about what's happening with the stock market and the coronavirus. And then in the next hour, we're going to actually, and this was part of the Democratic discussion last night, what to do about prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals and stuff. John Conradi is going to be with me. Chuck Grassley has a plan for prescription drugs, and he wants to come tell you guys about it. There are a couple of plans floating on the Republican side, and I'm trying to let them all come on and educate all of us about the competing plans. It is very interesting, I thought, that one of the standout moments is the Democrats attacking the pharmaceutical industry at a time they're also attacking the president for the coronavirus and not doing enough about the coronavirus. And it's the Democrats actually are the ones who want to completely scuttle the American pharmaceutical industry that's going to find the cure. They keep talking about government-funded research, and government-funded research is all well and good, but it's actually private pharmaceutical companies, by and large, that are doing the work on the research for the coronavirus. And here come the Democrats saying, no, get rid of those companies. That is not going to be a good thing for the Democrats. Now, to the performance, let us begin with Bernie Sanders. He and Pete Buttigieg had several fiery exchanges. I played some of them earlier. Here's another one.
In Senate races, if people in those races have to explain why the nominee of the Democratic Party is telling people to look at the bright side of the Castro regime, we've got to be a lot smarter about this and look to the
Senator
future.
Sanders, Senator Sanders, your response.
Let us be clear. Do we think health care for all, Pete, is some kind of radical communist idea? Do we think raising the minimum wage to a living wage? Do we think building the millions of units of affordable housing that we need? Do we think raising taxes on billionaires is a radical idea?
Let's talk about what's radical about that plan.
Reform
Senator,
is a radical idea.
The things you just named.
We think immigration reform. The truth is, Pete, that the American people support my agenda. That is why I am beating Trump in virtually every poll that has done, and why I will defeat him.
We got to open this up. Universal health care first.
Senator Klobuchar.
See what I meant about the moderators? I mean, that's just horrible. It's just horrible. But notice what Sanders does. Jonathan Last at the Bulwark actually pointed this out. A great guy, Jonathan. And he pointed out that Sanders runs debates through dominance, and what he does is he tries to talk over everyone and shout everybody down on stage. And do you really think he's going to be able to do that against Donald Trump? You're going to have these two New Yorkers yelling at each other on the stage. And Sanders, of course, he claims to be from Vermont now, but he's actually from New York. You're going to have these two New Yorkers yelling at each other on the Democratic debate, Sarah, on the general election debate stage, and it's going to go poorly for Sanders because Trump actually gets the showmanship in a way that Sanders does. And, by the way, that's something I thought about last night. A random aside, and we'll get to Bloomberg in depth here in a minute, but Bloomberg may be a very successful billionaire, but he's really bad at the showmanship of politics. And increasingly today, getting elected is all about showmanship. And that matters, and Bloomberg was really terrible on stage. But to Bernie, nobody could throw him off last night because he held his own on this debate stage. There was so much willingness to go after other people on the debate stage and fire at other people. And Joe Biden wanted to shine on the debate stage to prove to South Carolina that he could win. And Biden actually did well. But nobody could take off Bernie. Nobody could take one more Bernie Sanders clip for you.
We have a criminal justice system today that is not only broken, it is racist. Got more people in jail than any other country on earth, including China. And one of the reasons for that is a horrific war on drugs. So I do believe that on day one, we will change the Federal Controlled Substance Act, which, if you can believe it, now equates heroin with marijuana. That's insane. We're going to take marijuana out of that and effectively legalize marijuana in every state in the country. What we are also going to do is move to expunge the records of those people who are arrested for possession of marijuana. And I'll tell you what else we're going to do. We're going to provide help to the African American, Latino, Native American community to start businesses to sell legal marijuana rather than let a few corporations control the legalized marijuana market.
Wait, did Bernie Sanders just say he wants to help black people sell drugs? He did. You just heard Bernie Sanders say this. Wait. Let's get back to this. Can I do this?
We have a criminal justice going to do. We're going to provide help to the African American, Latino, Native American community to start businesses to sell legal marijuana rather than let a few corporations control the legalized marijuana market.
There you go. We're going to let black and Hispanic Americans be drug dealers. And Native Americans. Let's not forget the Native Americans. That's Bernie Sanders' plan. Instead of corporations being drug dealers, we're going to let them be the legal drug dealers. Wow. Oh, Bernie. God bless Bernie. Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, wow. I can't. But, well, I mean, I get what he meant. But, oh, come on. Wow. Talk about pandering to a crowd there, the crowd that hated his guts. We're gonna help black people, Hispanic people, and Native American people open drug dealing businesses instead of letting corporations be the drug dealers. Wow. Then there's Joe Biden.
I'm the only one on this stage that actually got anything done on health care. Okay? I'm the guy the president turned to and said, go get the votes for Obamacare. And I noticed what everybody's talking about is the plan that I first introduced. That is to go and add to Obamacare, provide a public option, a Medicare-like option. It cost and increase the subsidies. It cost a lot of money. It cost $750 billion over 10 years. But I pay for it by making sure that Mike and other people pay at the same tax rate their secretary pays at. That's how we get it paid, number one. Number two, you know, from the moment we passed that signature legislation, Mike called it a disgrace, number one. Number two, Trump decided to get rid of it. And number three, my friends here came up with another plan. But they don't tell you. When you ask Bernie how much it cost, the last time he said that, I think it was on your show, he said, we'll find out. We'll find out how, or something to that effect. It cost over $35 trillion bucks. Right. Let's get real.
So that was Biden in his defense of the Obama agenda, something that he's done a lot in South Carolina. You know, Biden has been attacking Bernie Sanders in South Carolina for contemplating running against Barack Obama. It's probably left a mark. Biden had a good debate performance last night. What he needed to do to secure first place in South Carolina. The problem with that is, so we've got polling out of Texas now. PPP, they are a Democratic pollster, and they try to do a good job in Democratic polls. Otherwise, they're polling trolls. They do crazy polls trying to make Republicans look bad. But in the Democratic primary, they're trying to get it right in Texas. And they actually show that Mike Bloomberg is hurting Joe Biden, and that Biden could beat Bernie Sanders, but with Bloomberg and Biden in the race, Sanders is winning. And I suspect that's going to be the coming attack on Bloomberg, is that it's actually Bloomberg who is hurting the other people in the race. One more from Biden. This is a bizarre moment for him.
Why should anyone have faith that you're the one who can get this done now?
Because I'm the only one that ever got it done nationally. I beat the NRA twice. I got assault weapons banned. I got magazines that could not hold more than 10 rounds in them. I got them eliminated, except we had a thing called an election with hanging chads in Florida, and it was not reauthorized. In addition to that, I passed the Brady bill with waiting periods. I led that fight. But my friend to my right and others have, in fact, also given to the gun manufacturers absolute immunity. Imagine if I stood here and said we give immunity to drug companies, we give immunity to tobacco companies. That has caused carnage on our streets. 150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. More than all the wars including Vietnam, from that point on. Carnage on our street. And I want to tell you, if I'm elected and I'm coming for you and gun manufacturers, I'm going to take you on and I'm going to beat you. I'm the only one who's done it.
All righty. Well, Joe believes that half of Americans have been killed by guns. So we got Bernie Sanders, who wants to let black people be drug dealers legally, and Hispanic people and Native Americans. And we've got Joe Biden, who believes that half of America has died at the hands of guns. And these are the big front runners in South Carolina now. Biden, again, to his credit, Biden actually did well, and he held his own for South Carolina. And if Bloomberg wasn't there, he would be doing better. Here again, here's the data here. This is from 1,045 likely Democratic primary voters commissioned by Progress Texas with PPP polling. It is a phone and text. They texted people on February 24th and 25th. Margin of error of 3%. Bloomberg will be on the ballot on Super Tuesday. We wanted to see how his appearance impacts the race, so we asked voters their preference with and without Bloomberg. We tested approval, disapproval on 10 issues. With Bloomberg on the Texas ballot, it's Bernie 24, Biden 24, Bloomberg 17. Without Bloomberg on the Texas ballot, it's Biden 31, Bernie 25, Warren 17. The Bloomberg's emergence has the biggest impact on Biden in Texas. The rest of his support is spread out among Warren and Klobuchar, and Steyer goes from 1 to 3%. Texas approval, disapproval ratings. Bloomberg, it is 41 approved, 39 disapprove. With Bernie, it's 60 approves, 27 disapprove. Biden, 64 approve, 18 disapprove. Warren, 66 approve, 19 disapprove. What's interesting there with Warren is that her approval is higher than the others, but people aren't voting for her. And Bloomberg's negatives are really high considering how much he's been up on the polls. Now, among younger voters, it's Bernie 42, Warren 21, Biden 11. Texas voters age 46 and up are divided evenly between Biden, Bernie, Bloomberg, and Warren. Second choices, Warren is the most popular second choice, followed by Biden and Bernie. Among Latinos, it is Bernie 27, Biden 23, Bloomberg 22. Among African Americans, Biden 39, Bernie 21, Bloomberg is 39 as well. So Bloomberg taking votes from Biden in Texas among black voters is dragging Biden into a tie with Sanders, and that's not good. I guarantee you that very, very shortly we're going to start seeing counter arguments from the Biden folks. Remember, there was a story we talked about the other day in New York Magazine that Bloomberg's campaign is so arrogant they have taken to calling Biden donors and yelling at them for continuing to fund Joe Biden, saying they're helping Bernie Sanders by doing that. And the reality is, from the polling, it looks like Bloomberg is actually helping Sanders, particularly in a place like Texas. He's dragging Joe Biden down out of a competitive role. Now, that brings us to Mike Bloomberg, who had a bit of a faux pas on stage last night. He admitted to buying the House of Representatives.
Mayor Bloomberg, please.
Let's just go on the record. They talked about 40 Democrats. 21 of those were people that I spent $100 million to help elect. All of the new Democrats that came in and put Nancy Pelosi in charge and gave the Congress the ability to control this president, I got them.
I got them. Again, Bloomberg on stage last night, he if you want to say he had a good debate performance, it was like coming out of a coma and still being in a hospital bed. That was his improvement on the debate stage. And Senator Warren went after him again on the and listen, I'm going to play this. This is a 2.5-minute bit of this debate, a little less than 2.5. And I want to play this for you because it is deeply relevant and shows the extent to which Elizabeth Warren, who I want to talk about next, is going after Bloomberg to stop him, not going after Bernie to stop him.
At least I didn't have a boss who said to me, kill it. The way that Mayor Bloomberg
never said that.
Have said to one of his pregnant employees. People want to a chance to hear.
And again, the crowd is
People
clearly
want
with
a
Bloomberg.
chance to hear from the women who
I
have
never
worked.
said that.
I want to allow
and
the mayor
for the
an
record, if
opportunity
she
to
was a
respond.
teacher in New York City, she would never have had that problem. We treated our teachers the right way, and the unions will tell you exactly that.
Well, Mayor Bloomberg,
Then
Senator Warren has raised.
let us have the women have an opportunity to speak. The Bloomberg corporations and Mayor Bloomberg himself have been accused of discrimination. They are bound by non-disclosures so that they cannot speak. If he says there is nothing to hide here, then sign a blanket release and let those women speak out so that they can tell their stories the way I can tell my story without having
Thank you. I
that
understand.
they're going to be sued by a billionaire.
Thank you. We have
And again, yes, this is how bad the moderation was.
a number of issues discussed tonight, but I want to give the mayor an opportunity to respond because she has raised concerns about women in your workplace. At the last debate, you said some of your female employees might not have liked some of your jokes. Did these women take your jokes wrong, or were you wrong to make the jokes?
Probably wrong to make the jokes. I don't remember what they were, so I assume if it bothered them, I was wrong, and I apologize. I'm sorry for that. But what happened here is we went back 40 years, and we could only find 3 cases where women said they were uncomfortable. Nobody accused me of doing anything other than just making a comment or two. And what the senator did suggest was that we release these women from the non-disclosure agreement. I did that 2 days later, and my company has said we will not use non-disclosure agreements ever again. The senator has got it, and I don't know what else she wants us to do.
Oh, I'll be
We're
clear.
following exactly what she asked
I'll
to
tell
do.
you exactly
And the
what I
trouble
want.
is,
He
with the
opened her up
senator,
to it,
enough
but now he's
is
gonna have to
never
keep
enough for
talking.
what this. I'm going to start focusing on some of these other things. We just cannot continue to relitigate this every time. We did what she asked. And thank you. We've probably made the world better because of it. And by my company renouncing using these, we've probably changed, hopefully, the corporate landscape all across America.
No,
If you
I'm
get
sorry,
nominated,
Mark.
we'll be.
Y'all, Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee. He's just going to be. With these clowns on the debate stage doing that sort of thing, Sanders is going to be the nominee.
I really do like his opinion on things.
It is actually very striking to me how poorly they were able to go after Bernie Sanders last night. They didn't have it, and then poor Bloomberg Bloomberg is bad on the debate stage.
You've said that President Xi Jinping of China is not a dictator and that he is responsive to his constituents and that the U.S. must cooperate with Beijing. How far does that go? Would you allow Chinese firms to build critical U.S. infrastructure?
No, I would not. And I think the Chinese government has not been open. Their press, the freedom of press does not exist there. Their human rights record is abominable, and we should make a fuss, which we've been doing, I suppose. But we make no mistake about it. We have to deal with China if we're ever going to solve the climate crisis. We have to deal with them because our economies are inextricably linked. We would not be able to sell or buy the products that we need. And in terms of whether he's a dictator, he does serve at the behest of the Politburo, of their group of people.
Wait.
But there's no question he has an enormous amount.
Do you know who picks the Politburo? President Xi of China picks the Politburo.
Power. But he does play to his constituency. You can negotiate with him. That's exactly what we have to do. Make it seem that it's in his interest and it's his people's interest to do what we want to do. Follow the rules, particularly no stealing of intellectual property. Follow the rules in terms of the trade the agreements that we have are reciprocal and go equally in both directions.
It's interesting to me that you got Bernie Sanders praises Fidel Castro, and the Democrats are outraged by him. By the way, Barack Obama praised Fidel Castro as well, and that's Bernie Sanders' response to it. Is Obama said many of the same things about Fidel Castro, but it was after the 2012 election when Obama decided he wanted to open relations with Cuba. He started praising Fidel Castro. Bernie Sanders praising Fidel Castro. Suddenly it's an abominable sin, an abomination among the Democrats right now. But then you got Bloomberg refusing to acknowledge that the president of China is a dictator who handpicked the Politburo that keeps him in power. That Bloomberg isn't willing to realize this probably actually makes him more dangerous than Bernie. For all the Democrats claiming Trump is an authoritarian, the Democrats sure do love him. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, you want to be a part of the program, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Happy to take your reaction to the Democratic debate last night. My goodness gracious. Let's get some of the press reaction out of the way before we move on to other stuff. But a housekeeping note first. What is it, next Wednesday? A week from today. Yes, a week from today. I will be at the University of Georgia in Athens talking to the college Republicans there Wednesday evening. And I have no idea whether it's a public event or not. But I'll be in Athens on Wednesday, a week from today. I guess I need to see about doing my evening show from there so that I can scoot over to UGA. I like going up to Athens. I hadn't been there in a while. And I need to try to go since I can't get to LSU. And Athens is a way better college town than Baton Rouge anyway. But nonetheless, I digress. And prayers for all of you who are giving up stuff for Lent. I'm happy to carry your vices for you for the next 40 days. And those of you who are going to go, I don't do the Lenten thing. I grew up Southern Baptist and now I'm in the PCA, so that's not something we do. Now, on to the media reaction. They're still upset about Bernie Sanders out there. Rahm Emanuel.
You don't need to reinvent the wheel when we know what works. And I think that if I'm not a fan of Senator. I'm personally friendly with Senator Sanders. I'm not a fan of the politics. I think it will lead to an electoral defeat when, in fact, the country is looking for an alternative to Donald Trump. They want to vote in a different direction.
Yes, they do. Here's Gloria Borger from CNN.
There were times when there were two candidates talking repeatedly at the same time.
Exactly. And of course, every candidate there was thinking, I've got to do well here because this could be it for me, except for Bernie, maybe. So you know what the stakes were. So it's difficult to be a moderator in this case, obviously. But you needed to control it. Yeah. And it was out of control. And as a viewer,
you can't hear when people are talking.
You just can't.
No, as he talks over, you get here. And that's it, though. That is it. The Democrats, they couldn't really take the edge off Bernie because they were so busy talking over each other. Here's one of the Democratic consultants on CNN last night.
I think it was a difficult and chaotic and frustrating debate, which is about where we are in terms of the Democratic primary process to begin with. So if you're coming in, it was a decent entry point to the way the contest is going at this point. I think.
Do you think CBS intentionally was modeling it?
It was meta. They were trying to mimic the actual feeling of being one of us, and they did a brilliant job of it. I thought.
It was also co-hosted by Twitter, so this does feel a lot like Twitter.
You know what? That makes perfect sense.
And Van Jones.
I was disappointed with Bernie's answer on the socialism question. He had to know that was coming. There's no reason to do a big retrospective nostalgia scream fest about authoritarian regimes from the 70s. It was an opportunity for Bernie to clarify to the American people that when he says democratic socialism, that's the point. It's not that stuff from Cuba. It's not that stuff from the Soviet Union. It's the stuff that you see in Northern Europe that's working well for normal people, and they vote all the time. He failed to do that. It's unbelievable that he failed to do it. It's what a big chunk of our party needs to hear from him, and he did not do it tonight.
Didn't do it tonight, except nobody really came after him. And that is just the reality. You may dislike Bernie Sanders, but I got to think if at this point, if you are a Democrat who wants to stop Sanders, you're having a real hard time doing it, and it's starting to gain traction. I did get an email from someone during the break that I didn't mention Tom Steyer, and I really didn't, or Amy Klobuchar. They didn't have great debate performances. Steyer, I don't even want to play anything he said from the debate performance. Let me just play you a little excerpt of this. This is from the CNN did a town hall with Steyer. CNN, to their credits, they've done a good job putting these candidates on stage, doing town halls with them. They try to get Democratic audiences for the Democrats, Republicans for the Republicans. They're not doing the Republicans this year, obviously, because Donald Trump's the only game in town. But listen to part of this. Let's see. Can I rearrange the audio here? I'm doing it on the fly. I want to give equal time, even to idiots like Steyer. Well, no, see, you're being spared. The clip does not suddenly want to load of poor old Tom Steyer and his drivel about the environment.
And I still have buying a house, getting married, and having kids ahead of me. What do you say to people my age and those who are younger who are frankly terrified of what climate change will do to this planet and our futures?
So, Natalie, thank you for asking that question. Look, I am the only person running for president who will say that climate is his or her number one priority. The only one. Go ask him. The only one. And I've said that I will declare, just so you know, Natalie, a state of emergency on climate on the first day of my presidency. And I will use the executive emergency powers of the presidency to tell companies how they can generate electricity, what kind of cars they can build on what schedule, what kind of buildings we're going to have, how we're going to use our public lands, how the government, which is the biggest buyer of fossil fuels in the world, is going to move to clean energy.
I'm sorry, there's a term. Gosh, what is it? What do you call someone who believes that the government should own the means of production and give to those who don't have by taking from those who do? What do you call that? The term escapes me, but those people, they want to control the means of production. Whatever you call them, that's what Tom Steyer is advocating right there. Oh, no, we're not allowed to use the communist word. No, that they want to assure us that the Democrats aren't communists. It's amazing how they keep moving. I'm not a big fan of the Overton window stuff. It's like the red pill, blue pill stuff. People who use this crap want to sound smart. They don't really know what they're talking about. Oh, what they're trying to do is move the Overton window, Mr. Erickson. They want to move the Overton window so the Democrats can sound more mainstream. No, they're just telling you who they are. That's all it is. It's not a matter of, oh, if I'm over here and I'm being super radical, we're going to move everybody in our direction. No, you're going to look like an idiot. Look at what's happening with Bernie Sanders. He's been doing this. Where do you think he's moving the Overton window? In the opposite direction. Wow. But one of the things I told you it was going to happen, I told you it was going to happen, is they are beginning to use the coronavirus. In fact, Jesse Waters on Fox News made the same point, and he's getting lit on fire, as is Rush Limbaugh, for making the same point that the Democrats intend to weaponize the coronavirus against Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's going to get whacked for this. If this keeps up and things go south, the Democrats are going to say, coronavirus is this president's Katrina.
Or remember Ebola during Obama.
Ebola, right. And they're going to politicize it, which, Republicans would never do if it happened. We don't ever act like that. No. So the only thing he can do is either full travel ban immediately or the rallying cry of Made in America and try to galvanize the country against the Chinese threat and try to ride it out until November. But who knows? If the stock market tanks, there's a huge sell-off day. And I lost $500 million today in the market. I don't know. I might have to go back to work.
I wonder what happened to Bloomberg.
Yeah, wonder what did happen to Bloomberg with the market sell-off. By the way, we should check that, shouldn't we? Here at the opening of the market hadn't been open that long today thus far. We've got the Dow is up 298.5 points right now, which is a good thing. Okay, now the coronavirus is starting to cause problems in the market. The Democrats are starting to use it as a political weapon against the president. They are claiming, in fact, that what the president says isn't true. This is from CNN a short time ago. John Berman,
one of the things the president said yesterday is that we're very close to a vaccine. Now, I know this is something you know a lot about. This is your job. Right. How close are we to a vaccine? Are we very close?
Well, I mean, the confusion, again, is we're close to starting a phase 1 trial to determine safety. We're going to do that in about 1.5 to 2 months. But that doesn't mean you have a vaccine. In order to get a vaccine that's practically deployable for people to use, it's going to be at least a year to a year and a half at best.
That's Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He is an expert in this, and that is a lot of confusion because there's actually CNN itself has run stories on various pharmaceutical companies saying they found a vaccine for it, and he's right, actually. They've got to do human testing on it, and they've got to make sure that it's something that's scalable, but we're headed in that direction. They are doing, however, the media is a blame Donald Trump routine. I want to play this clip from CNBC earlier. This is an interview with Lee Goldman. Lee Goldman is a billionaire hedge fund manager in New York City. I'm sorry, it's Lee Cooperman, Leon Cooperman. Lee Cooperman is a billionaire hedge fund manager in New York City. He is someone the markets pay attention to. He is someone the Democrats pay attention to. He is someone the Republicans pay attention to. And I want you to listen to what he says he's watching right now.
This week's brutal market sell-off has wiped $1.7 trillion in market capitalization from the S&P 500. Joining us right now by phone to try and put this in some perspective is Lee Cooperman. He's Omega Family Office Chairman and CEO. And Lee, we've talked an awful lot about this, the volatility we've seen the last couple of days and the straight down action. Are you a buyer or a seller in the market today?
I'm doing both, but I would say that on balance, I would be a buyer. I think the significance of an event for the market is a function of what the market was discounting when the event occurred. If you go back, I was on with one of your colleagues, Scott Wapner, on February 18th, and I said the market was knocking on the door of euphoria, that there were lots of issues that were being ignored by the market. I've lost a lot of money the last few days, don't get me wrong, because I'm an investor. But I would say that to have a strong opinion about the market today, you have to have a strong opinion about two issues. And one is the coronavirus. Does it get under control in a reasonable time frame? And second, that we don't have a socialist or communist in the White House. Okay. I have no expertise in the coronavirus other than my confidence that mankind will conquer this problem, and I think it'll be resolved by June. And again, I want to make it very clear, I have no particular expertise in that regard. Second,
which problem, Lee? The socialist problem or the coronavirus?
Coronavirus.
Okay. All right, you don't.
Okay, the socialist problem, we'll have to see.
Might not be conquered by June.
I don't think the country is so leftist in its orientation that a Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren will be elected president. You know,
that's Lee. I mean, this is a guy, the markets, the president, the Democrats, they all listen to this guy. And he's out there saying, whoa, 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 Sanders and Warren, but also coronavirus. And the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, remember, I pointed this out the other day. On February 2nd, the president ordered air travel suspended with China. And the Democrats said it was an overreaction. And now they're saying he's not doing enough. The CDC came out yesterday and said that we will see person-to-person contact in the United States, that it will spread in the United States. They're beginning to warn schools, churches, organizations that large gatherings of people could cause problems, that the infectious disease running amok could be a problem. They're concerned about that. And you've got the Democrats now capitalizing on it. They're pointing out that the infectious disease expert who was the coordinator for the White House is gone and has been gone for 2 years. But, I've talked to a buddy of mine who actually is at the CDC, and he said that's not actually a bad thing. You're hearing this from Democrats, but that certain personnel are gone from the White House who are coordinating. He says, but actually we've got a Secretary of Health and Human Services, and we've got the underlying bureaucracy at the CDC, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services is the natural coordinator for this, not some guy in the White House, and that we should let the experts do it, not the politicians inside the White House, so we get a better response. The market, however, is going down on this, and we now have word this morning that there is an American soldier in Korea who has contracted the coronavirus from person-to-person contact. Our first American soldier, and if he's contracted it, he's probably spread it already. That is a concern of the CDC. I gotta tell you, though. We're not hearing outside of China. We're not hearing about mass casualties from the coronavirus. It very much like the flu, the elderly and the young and people with lung ailments are more susceptible than anyone else. But I do wonder how much of this now is panic, as opposed to having a rational basis for, the flu, for example, is bad every year, but it has become so commonplace it's not something that everyone dwells on. There is a vaccine for the flu, although a lot of people don't get the vaccine for the flu, and most people who get the flu wind up surviving, and that appears now to be the case with the coronavirus as well, based on what we know. It may become a seasonal thing. We don't know that. If it becomes a seasonal thing, it's something that will be accommodated. There will be a vaccine ultimately, I think, that is developed for it. But right now, there's so much unknown and there's so much fear about it. It is becoming a political weapon for the Democrats to use against the president of the United States. The president knows this, however, and is responding accordingly. But it's really something that a virus that broke out in China is going to become a political instrument of Democrats in the United States to use against the president. But will it actually work when the Democrats are out there trying to undermine and destroy the American pharmaceutical industry, the free market enterprise system in this country that's allowed innovation? This is an attack that the president, interestingly enough, could probably turn on its head against the Democrats by saying, hey, these people want to wipe out the industry. And that's the industry that's going to save us. The government's not going to save us. It's the American pharmaceutical industry that's going to save us. And the Democrats want to wipe it out. The president's got an argument there.
Erick Erickson wades through the Erick. That's 877-973-7425.
Just a reminder, text ARMY to 33777. There is Second Amendment legislation in the state Senate here in Georgia. One, it would allow churches greater flexibility in who can be armed in a church. A lot of churches don't want. So the way the law works now, and I love that the bill, just if you're wondering, it's 357. Just think 357 Magnum. That's the bill. Senate Bill 357 by Bill Heath. The way current law works in Georgia is churches either have to let everyone carry or let no one carry. They really, and now most churches don't do that. Most churches have a list of people who are authorized to carry, and technically that runs afoul of the law. What Bill Heath of Bremen wants to do is change the law and say churches are allowed to do what most of them are doing right now, which is designate classes of people in the church who can carry. There are a lot of churches who refuse to go along with the legislation because of the blanket. For example, they'd like to have members. The way the law works, you either say everyone can or no one can. You can't say members of the church can carry, visitors can't. You can't say the diaconate can carry, the session can't. You can't say the safety committee of the diaconate can, but the rest of the deacons can't. You can't do anything like that. And it doesn't apply to schools run by churches. There are a lot of churches, there are a lot of schools that are run by churches. My church has a school that it runs here in Macon, and there's churches and those schools are considered separate under the law, and this would allow them together so that the churches could set a gun safety protocol for schools. And it's had a review. It has not advanced out of committee. It's a great piece of legislation because it does allow churches some discretion. So text the word ARMY, please. The word ARMY, not please, just the word ARMY, ARMY, to 33777. If you haven't already, you'll get subscribed to the activist list. What happens is you will get a text back asking for your email address. You send your email address. It'll subscribe you to the activist list. We don't sell the list. You're not going to get a bunch of advertising. It is just for when there's an action alert like this. We want you to be able to contact, make it very easy for you through our activist portal to be able to contact your member of the state house and state senate and say, hey, SB 357 by Bill Heath, please support it. It's good legislation. We'll make it really easy for you to do, but you've got to take the first step. I can offer you a solution, only you can take it. And the solution is text ARMY to 33777 so we can keep you engaged. We pay for that out of our pocket. It's not advertising, sponsored activism portal. I do it myself. And heck, I at some point need to start earning income from the show instead of doing it for free. If you want to advertise on the program, by the way, let us know. Erick@theresurgent.com. Always happy to have advertisers. Now that we're across the state, you can get your brand, product, service, whatever from the entire state of Georgia. The phone number here, if you want to call in with your Democratic debate thoughts, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. But right when we come back, John Conradi is going to call in and talk to me. He is working with Senator Chuck Grassley with an outside group. They're advancing a prescription drug reform package. And the issue here is that the Senate, Democrats and Republicans have competing plans to lower the cost of prescription drug benefits. And one of the issues with the Democratic plan is essentially they will force American drug manufacturers to lower prices, which will, of course, impact the ability of these companies to do research across the board, including on things like the coronavirus. And that's the Democratic plan. Chuck Grassley has an alternative plan, and I'm trying to there are several competing Republican plans. I'm trying to do my job to educate all of you on each of them, and so I've invited them on, and we're going to start with John Conradi on the Chuck Grassley prescription drug plan on how to lower prices in this country without killing the industry that might save our lives.